He made a concerted effort to appear as if he was attentively listening to this little man. The sugary speech of the potential partner, adorned with expressive epithets, was pleasing to the ear, but no more than that. Over the years in the business, Kevin had learned to gauge people's intentions almost instinctively. However, in Corey's case, this vital indicator was far from standard. The conversation suddenly fell silent, as if Kevin had read Corey's farts. Though the office owner doubted that this man possessed telepathic abilities. To ease the atmosphere a bit, he inquired, "Corey, I'm not opposed to your proposal, but I need assurances. You understand, in today's business climate, redirecting production without additional investments can be challenging, and the risk doesn't always justify it. Do you understand what I'm saying?" The visitor suddenly became anxious, and his face began to glisten with beads of sweat. Kevin felt repulsed because the one thing he found most horrifying was shaking a sweaty hand. This repulsion was present on an intuitive level, and he deliberately avoided even brief interactions with people who had such a shortcoming. However, Corey was no simpleton, since he practically held the entire regional business in his hands, and expelling him would be a fatal mistake. Corey was well aware of the answers to all the questions asked, but he remained silent, savoring the prolonged pause. The situation was saved by the secretary, who entered the office without warning and carefully placed cups of aromatic coffee on the coffee table. Corey inhaled the scent and rolled his eyes. "Divine aroma," he exclaimed. "Let's get back to your question, that is, the assurances," he continued. "I'm sure we can find common ground because the merger is beneficial for both parties. Your small business's products have a tremendous following, and I believe, with proper promotion, we can significantly expand the consumer market." Kevin understood well where Corey was trying to lead him. He took a small sip and abruptly shifted his gaze from the window to Corey's face. "That's true. And what percentage would go to me?" Corey shifted in his chair, and the owner relished his discomfiture. Mentally, he had already credited himself with a second victory and was prepared to put forth his own terms against his opponent. However, Corey rebounded from the blow surprisingly quickly. He cautiously pushed away his dining utensils. "Thank you for the excellent coffee. It was truly interesting and even beneficial to have a conversation with you. We'll certainly take all your concerns into account. I think my lawyers will contact Michael soon, and we can finalize everything." Kevin didn't expect this abrupt change, but Corey relished his well-deserved victory. He skillfully put the overconfident young man in his place, making it clear that he had no say in the matter. As if delivering a final blow, Corey extended his glistening, sweat-covered hand. "Until we meet again, Kevin. Give my regards to your father." The door closed behind the visitor, and Kevin couldn't regain his composure after the humiliating defeat. His right hand hung in the air as if it could cleanse itself of the touch of an untrustworthy person. Kevin had placed high hopes on this meeting, but Corey made it clear that he wasn't going to consider his opinion. Irritation overwhelmed him and demanded an outlet. Without even realizing it, the secretary, standing nearby, became the object of his frustration, and she opened the door without warning. "Kevin, your mother called," she said. He erupted into a shout. "Robin, you've been working here for so many years and still can't grasp that you should knock first. At least that's how normal secretaries do it." The distressed woman frequently blinked her eyes. "But you told me that if something urgent comes up." "It's okay," Robin responded. "Since when did my relatives' calls become urgent matters?" The secretary hurriedly left the room. Kevin felt a surge of anger and an inexplicable fear. He had experienced this unpleasant feeling before, but couldn't fathom its origin. He took 10 deep breaths, which helped calm his nervous system. Instead of anger, he began to feel a sense of guilt. "Why did I lash out at Robin? I need to go and apologize," he said aloud, resolutely swinging open the door. "Robin, could you step in for a moment?" The secretary's eyes were red from the spilled tears, and Kevin felt unbearably ashamed of his wild outburst. He approached her. "Robin, I implore you, please forgive me. I won't try to justify my behavior because it was inexcusable. I just ask for your forgiveness. I promise you it won't happen again." She smiled reluctantly. "It's nothing. Over the years, I've grown used to many things. Although Michael never shouted at me." The extinguished aggression stirred inside Kevin again. but he managed to restrain the urge to direct more negativity towards the secretary. Still, he couldn't help but express his discontent to his assistant in a mentor-like tone. "Robin, a piece of advice for the future. Never discuss the merits of the predecessor in the presence of the current leader. I know perfectly well about my father's qualities, and I don't need to be reminded of them unnecessarily." The woman blushed and cast her eyes down. "I'm sorry, I didn't know that, Michael. I apologize. I'll keep your feedback in mind." She was about to leave, but Kevin stopped her. "You mentioned that my mother called." "Yes, Kate asked you to call her back as soon as you're available." "Thank you." He nodded to the secretary, and she quickly departed. He picked up his mobile phone, but didn't immediately dial the familiar number. His anger, flavored with inflated self-esteem, had not yet subsided. He very much wanted to feel like the sole owner of the company. However, his subordinates and partners kept recalling his father, which irritated him the most. He grumbled aloud. "Now, my mother will have something to say. These relatives are getting on my nerves. Kevin, I've been trying to reach you for 2 hours. Dad's condition has worsened again, and he's in the hospital right now. Please come quickly. Derek and Anna are already here." Kevin couldn't resist a touch of sarcasm. "Mom, you could have spared me this. My brother has an uncanny knack for showing up at holidays and funerals first." Kate raised her voice. "Think before you speak. Your irony is entirely out of place right now. Your father is in a critical condition, so I'm asking you earnestly." "Mom, I understand, and I promise to behave appropriately. I'll be at the hospital in about 15 minutes." Upon his arrival in the reception area, he informed Robin, "I won't be here for the rest of the workday, so please reschedule all meetings for tomorrow, or even better, for next week." The sympathetic secretary inquired, "Is there something serious going on with Michael?" "Seems so. Mom said he's in the intensive care unit." Robin covered her mouth with her hand, and her eyes welled up with tears again. Kevin thought how much he would like to have devoted employees like his father's secretary, although he didn't want to think about the fact that he had already found a replacement for Robin. Tension was building up again, and he had some rather gloomy thoughts swirling in his head. Most recently, Kevin had been particularly concerned about how his father would handle his assets. Michael had been dealing with health issues for a long time, but in the past few months, his condition had deteriorated significantly. The older son knew that the time was drawing near when the leadership of the company would pass to him. He didn't even entertain the thought of any other option. The first person he encountered at the hospital was his brother. Derek was smoking by the entrance, paying no heed to the stern sign that read, "Smoking on hospital premises is strictly prohibited." Kevin shook his brother's hand. "Hey, I thought you'd quit smoking." Derek looked away. Couldn't hold out. "Is it really that bad?" "It's still uncertain. The doctors are all huddled together, like some sort of council. They're deciding what to do. As soon as Mom called, Anna and I came right over. I'm aware. Corey held me up, so I couldn't come immediately." Derek scrutinized his brother closely. "You'd do well to keep your distance from him. You know what his reputation is like." Kevin curtly cut him off. "I can manage without advice." His younger brother simply shrugged. "As you wish." The men walked into a spacious hallway where women doctors were waiting. Upon seeing their elder son, Kate rose from the couch, and Kevin gently embraced her. "Mom, please don't cry. Dad has had seizures before. He's a strong man, and the doctors in this hospital are the best. Trust me, everything will be all right." "Oh, my dear, I'm afraid this time it's much more serious." "Mom, let's not make predictions. Let's wait to hear what the specialists have to say." They had to wait for a long time, though minutes felt like hours for the family. Soon after Kevin arrived, a group of doctors in white coats entered the hallway. A tall woman approached them. "Are you Michael's family?" "Yes, doctor. Please tell us about my father's condition." Derek and Anne also stood up, while Kate remained seated, staring into the distance. The doctor surveyed the trio. "Unfortunately, I have no good news. Your father's condition is critical. What's even sadder is that surgery is currently not an option. The patient wouldn't withstand it, so we and our colleagues have decided to observe your father overnight, and then we will decide what to do next." Derek asked, "Can we see him?" The doctor looked at him with disapproval. "Young man, even the slightest agitation right now could lead to tragic consequences. Therefore, there's no question of visiting. If the patient's condition improves by tomorrow morning, then perhaps we'll allow a brief visit. All right, we'll wait until morning. The doctor shrugged. Why put yourselves through this? You should go home. Again, seconds and minutes stretched out slowly. Kevin was nervous and frequently stepped outside. Kate realized that he had followed his stepbrother's example when she caught a whiff of tobacco on him. But scolding her son in such a situation seemed inappropriate to her. She only cautioned them both. Boys, you should smoke less. It won't help your father in any way. Outside the hospital windows, twilight descended when the tall doctor appeared again. Come in quietly, but I can only allow you to spend a maximum of 2 minutes in the room. They donned gowns and shoe covers and followed the doctor into the ward. Michael's face was unrecognizable. Bluish pallor covered his cheeks and forehead, while his nose and chin had distinct contours. Kevin inhaled the medication-infused air, catching a whiff of death in the mixture. His father signaled to his sons to come closer. His voice was weak but determined. Guys, I know you haven't always gotten along, but I implore you to forget all your quarrels, help each other, and don't mistreat your mother. The lawyer has all the documents I've prepared in advance. I want everything to be fair. He closed his eyes and breathed heavily. His facial features became even sharper, and the sons understood that this was their father's final guidance. The doctor whispered, "That's it, go." The brothers watched as their mother leaned over their father. They went out to the hallway where Derek's wife, Anna, also sat alone. From the expressions on the brothers' faces, Anna understood that there was no good news to be expected. The weight of the impending tragedy bore down on their consciousness, and nobody felt like speaking. A few minutes later, Kate emerged from the room. She buried her face in her eldest son's chest and broke down in tears. How are we going to live without Michael? The doctor gazed sympathetically at the family, but she was no longer able to ease their grief. Michael, too, understood clearly that his time in this world was coming to an end. But the opportunity to bid farewell to his loved ones lightened his soul, and now he was recalling all the significant events of his long life. Michael had grown up as a calm child, but then it was as if someone had replaced him. Fearlessly, he got into fights if someone dared to harm the weak in his presence. This led to the boy's parents frequently being summoned to school, but his father never scolded him. He only once made a crushing remark. "What you're doing, Michael, standing up for those who can't defend themselves, is good. But remember, chivalry isn't always justified. Besides, one day, you might get beaten so badly that you'll forget your dear mother." Constance didn't like that her husband was so indifferent to their son's troubling behavior. She demanded stricter measures from him and told her son, "If you keep it up, Michael, you'll be sweeping the streets for the rest of your life." Michael took his mother's criticism with a smile. "Mom, it's strange that you're assigning such a future to me. Am I worse than the other kids? Are you asking me if you need more than the others? Mom, I stand up for justice. When you get a bad report from school and can't get into college, that's when you'll find out all about justice." Despite his hot temper, Michael was an excellent student. From a young age, he dreamed of a career as an officer and was confident he would get into a military academy. But his mother turned out to be right, as his character reference let him down. It was too late to choose another educational institution, and his father arranged for him to work at the factory where he himself worked. "Don't worry, Michael. This practical experience is useful, and next year you can reapply." But those plans were not meant to be because he received a draft notice from the military commissariat that spring. His mother was deeply worried. Michael was facing the army. Michael's mother's bad premonition didn't disappoint, and after 3 months of training, Michael, along with other young guys, was sent to one of the hottest spots on the planet. What's more, no one even warned them about where they would be stationed next. They were simply ordered to gather in the evening and line up in the courtyard. They traveled for several days by train and then by cars through the desert. It was only when they arrived at the territory of a friendly state that the newcomers realized where they would have to undergo their school of courage. On the journey, Michael got to know Tom. This humorous guy was the life of the group, entertaining the soldiers with jokes. Only towards the end of their journey, when they were on the territory of the friendly state, Tom shared his concerns. "You know, Michael, I'm not really afraid of death. I'm just upset that there won't even be anyone to shed a tear for me." This confession deeply touched Michael, a 20-year-old. "Tom, don't you have anyone at all?" "No, I grew up in an orphanage. I was left at the orphanage door one winter. At least that's what the nurses told me. Good thing my real mother thought to wrap me in a blanket. Although, it doesn't matter. I would have died back then, just like I might die now." "Tom, don't talk like that. You've got to snap out of it. Everything is going to be fine." Perhaps Michael spoke persuasively because after that conversation, Tom did genuinely seem to cheer up. The friendship between the two young men grew stronger with each passing day. After their first serious skirmish, during which they found themselves ambushed but managed to escape unharmed thanks to Tom's cunning, the young men became even closer. Over the next 2 years, the friends often had to face death, but they were extraordinarily lucky. In the company, they even came up with a nickname for them, the Charm Pair. Anyone who had to experience hotspots of conflict knew that in war, a day lived is worth a whole month. All the soldiers eagerly awaited their return home. Tom and Michael dreamed of a peaceful life. "Michael, I don't know about you, but I'm getting married right away." "Tom, but first you need to find a bride. Didn't you realize I wasn't just hanging around in the medical unit?" "And who is she? Rachel or Molly?" "Molly." Michael saw his friend blush for the first time, but he didn't make fun of him. Instead, he said with understanding, "It's clear that you're really smitten. It hit me hard, but I'm afraid she might reject me." "Then don't put it off. Someone might snatch the girl away from you." Tom didn't have a chance to talk to the attractive nurse about his feelings because the medical unit was soon disbanded. He was upset about his indecision. "What a fool I am. Where am I supposed to find Molly now?" "Tom, you'll find another girl. Any girl would be happy to marry a hero like you. I don't want another one. You understand?" Michael was more than willing to help his friend, but he didn't know how to go about it. Tom had made several attempts to find the address of the missing girl, but the personal information of the employees was not accessible. "I'll find her anyway," Tom declared. This promise sounded like a solemn vow to Michael, who believed his friend would surely fulfill it. Even before being drafted into the military, they had decided not to part ways. "Tom, I've gotten so used to you in these 2 years. Maybe we should continue moving through life together," Michael suggested. "I'm not against it, but do you have a place for me to stay?" "I have nothing. I joined vocational school after the orphanage, where at least there was a dormitory. I only worked there for 2 years before being drafted into the army." "Buddy, do you think such trivialities will stop us? We'll crash at my place for the time being. My parents won't mind, and then we'll find you a job and a place to stay. We could even get you a job at my father's factory." Inspired by these plans, the young men returned to their homeland. But in 2 years, the country had changed significantly, and so had the people. The changes that were shouted about from every television had affected Michael's family as well. The demobilized soldier didn't recognize his parents. His always reasonable mother had turned into a quarrelsome market vendor, and his father spent his days in despondency. Ian greeted his son without much joy. "Our factory is on the brink of closure. Our workshop was shut down 2 months ago. They say it's an unprofitable business. So, here we are, your mother and I, trying to figure things out." During this pessimistic speech by her husband, Constance was preparing dinner with meager supplies. "We just need to endure a little, and everything will change," she said. The head of the family simply waved his hand. Only an idiot would believe in empty promises from those who started all this. "Constance, use your brain. You're not a foolish woman, and you must understand that all these changes will lead us to ruin." The young men didn't immediately grasp the extent of these changes. For a while, they felt as though they had entered a parallel world and that taking one step would lead them back to the familiar and comfortable place. However, no one knew which direction that step should be taken. Tom spent just one night at Michael's place and prepared to leave. "Michael, I should go. You guys have enough problems without me." But his friend interrupted him. "Don't make things up. It's always harder to go it alone. We agreed to stick together." Constance supported her son. "Tom, please don't leave. You're not a burden to us at all. And Michael is right. We can't handle this on our own today. And Tom decided to stay but resolved not to be a burden on his hospitable hosts. Right after returning, the guys began searching for jobs. However, they could only find positions as cargo handlers at the railway station. In those uncertain times, even such work was considered a stroke of luck. The pay was based on piecework, which suited the young men just fine but irritated some of the other guys in their crew. Do you guys think you deserve more than the rest? After the Afghan ordeal, the friends weren't afraid of such confrontations and confidently responded to the dissatisfied. Yes, we want to live decently, so we're putting in the effort. Such a response didn't sit well with some members of the labor collective, most of whom had a colorful past. Their brigadier even cautioned the friends once. Guys, be more careful with these troublemakers. Nearly each of them has a shiv in their pocket. The young man thanked the man for the warning, and he said with regret, if I had all guys like you in my crew, I'd be happy. But when you're surrounded by former convicts, it's not just about working, it's scary to even walk around. Apparently, someone overheard this unflattering description and decided to put the brigadier in his place. A particularly unruly bunch caused a commotion when the unloading of the wagons was almost done. The brigadier was overseeing the process. Guys, let's put in a little more effort, and then we can all go home. One zealous guy boldly declared, Commander, we want our pay first, and then we'll finish the job. The brigadier calmly replied, no, finish the job first, and then you'll get paid. You know the rules, and I won't change them. We'll make you change your mind. Several active men started to surround the brigadier. It seemed like Kevin was hoping for the support of the others, but Tom and Michael stood up for their boss. Guys, stop this. We're almost done. Let's finish the job and go our separate ways. The intervention of the young men didn't sit well with the agitated crowd, which suddenly turned on them. However, it seemed like the group didn't anticipate such strong resistance from the young men. In less than a minute, the main instigators writhed in pain on the ground, and the rest scattered. When the dust settled, the brigadier approached them. Guys, thank you so much, but you'd better not show up here again. These people won't forgive the humiliation, and they'll be lurking around the corner somewhere. The man quickly wrote something in his notebook and asked, did you just come from the army? Michael responded, yes, almost 2 weeks ago. We've been to Afghanistan. Can you tell? It's noticeable. You've got tan faces, and it's almost winter outside. I used to work in law enforcement. I left, but the professional skills stayed with me. I wrote down an address for you to visit. Go there and say you're from Paul. The brigadier generously paid them and wished them good luck. All the money they earned that night, the friends handed over to Constance, which greatly pleased her. The next morning, the young men headed to the address the brigadier had given them. They were quite surprised to find themselves at the door of a semi-basement office with a crudely written sign above it that said Life and Property Protection. Although the office of the agency didn't look very presentable, the guys had no other choice. They resolutely opened the door and found themselves in a small room with a single desk, behind which sat a young man roughly their age. He perked up immediately. What can I help you with? We're from Paul. He said you'd help us find work, they replied. The owner of the agency was delighted. Oh, if Paul himself sent you, then I must help you. We used to work together, fighting crime. But when everything changed and former criminals came to power, we left law enforcement. I decided to start my own business. The agency owner unexpectedly chuckled. Guys, you can't even imagine how insane this world is. I used to catch criminals, and now I protect them for big money. I suggested to Paul that he join, but he refused. He said his moral principles wouldn't allow him to stoop so low. But I think when you have nothing to feed your family with and you're hungry yourself, you can forget all conventions. The friends fully agreed with their new boss, who asked them to call him simply by his name Adam. After getting employed, life gradually improved for the young men. Their earnings allowed Tom to rent a comfortable apartment, and his connections helped him find his love Molly. But Michael beat his friend to marriage and even managed to have a son. When Tom jokingly reproached him, Michael, you're rushing through life so fast that I can't keep up with you, his friend replied in a playful manner. I've decided to stay ahead of the schedule just in case. In this life, anything can happen, so you have to use every day to its maximum efficiency. After Afghanistan, Michael's intuition sharpened, and he learned to foresee the next twist of fate well in advance. He had a premonition that he and his friend would have to look for a new job, but Tom didn't say anything. The business thrived for over 5 years. There was no shortage of clients, and Adam even managed to rent a more respectable office space. The staff also grew, and the company seemed to have the brightest prospects. But one former law enforcement colleague decided to neutralize the competition. First, an anonymous complaint was made against Adam, accusing his employees of exceeding their authority. Then representatives of the financial services came to the company, uncovering substantial debts. However, Adam had left for another country in time. The company was declared bankrupt, and all the employees were suddenly left without jobs. Tom and Michael were deeply affected by their latest setback. "Tom, what are we going to do now? I can't even imagine how to recover from this situation. I'm drowning in debt. I have to pay for the apartment, the car, and Kevin is growing up. He needs food and clothing," Michael fretted. Tom reassured Michael, "Don't panic. You're not alone in this situation. By the way, I have a family too, and our son is growing up. Luckily, Molly is working. But what's a nurse's salary like? One thing's for sure. We need to find another job." Michael suggested, "Well, we have experience in loading freight cars. Maybe we can join Paul's crew again." Tom immediately dismissed the idea. "No, that's not an option. We need to find something else." "Tom, what else can we do? We don't have any other skills. All we know is how to take down an opponent." Tom looked at Michael like a teacher does with a student. "Michael, you hit the nail on the head. Specialists like us are always in demand." "You mean?" Michael began but hesitated because the prospect of returning to a war zone scared him. Tom asked in the same steady voice, "If you have other options, please suggest them. Understand, we have no other way." They told their wives that they were going to work on a rotational basis and then signed a contract. Before their departure, they received a substantial advance. The contract included a clause that guaranteed a significant payout to the family in case of their deaths. This was a crucial factor that played a decisive role in signing the 2-year contract. Of course, comparing their previous military service with their new mission was not possible. Now, they were real professionals. But they had no choice, and they tried not to be overly heroic to stay alive. When their contract was approaching its end, the friends, out of habit, began making plans for the future, and Tom was always the one to initiate ideas. "Michael, I've been thinking that we shouldn't just spend our money. We should invest it in a profitable venture." "Tom, I've been thinking the same, but there are significant risks, and we don't want to end up losing everything. The competition is fierce, and everything worthwhile seems to be taken." "Agreed, there are risks, but we could, for example, partner with those who already have experience." Michael didn't like this idea. "Yay, and then they'll cheat us as soon as they get the chance." "No, this scenario is definitely not for us." But Tom unexpectedly suggested something that had never crossed Michael's mind. "You're thinking too small, Michael, and you've completely forgotten about your parents." At first, Michael didn't understand where Tom was going with this. "What makes you think I've forgotten? I write to them whenever I can, and I send letters to Kate and Kevin too." Tom chuckled. "I'm not talking about that. Your parents have adapted well to the new value system and have held their ground quite firmly." Michael gasped. "Are you suggesting that we should open a small shop and sell all sorts of things?" "Starting with that, yes. But trading will be much more profitable if we provide customers with a place to grab a meal on site, like a cafeteria." "Exactly." Michael thought for a long time and then exclaimed, "Tom, you're a genius. Why don't I have such smart ideas?" "Because you think too narrowly, and you need to expand your horizons a bit." The young men were filled with a new idea, and they even drafted a basic plan for the near future. However, an unforeseen event occurred. Just before their contract was about to end, their convoy was ambushed. Throughout their service, Tom and Michael had been assigned various tasks, primarily escorting humanitarian shipments. On that day, they were leading a convoy when suddenly, ahead of them, one shell exploded, followed by another. Cries filled the air, and people scattered in search of cover. The friends also rushed to leave their immobilized vehicle, but something exploded right in front of them, and the world plunged into darkness. Perhaps Michael didn't remain unconscious for long, as when he opened his eyes, the mist had not yet cleared. He couldn't hear anything and attempted to stand up, but immediately fell to the ground. At that moment, external sounds broke through, and he distinctly heard someone wheezing nearby. Michael struggled to turn and saw Tom's eyes, but in them was a vast, lifeless void. He began shaking his friend. "Tom, hold on, don't you dare die. We have so much ahead of us. Medics will come soon, and we'll get you to the hospital," Michael urged. His wounded friend forced a faint smile and whispered, "Michael, take care of my family, please." Tom's eyes remained fixed on the blue sky, devoid of any flicker of life. Michael continued to shake Tom's lifeless body, shouting, "Don't leave, Tom. This isn't fair." Unfamiliar people approached and pulled Michael away from his friend. From all sides, there were shouts, and he lost consciousness again. When Michael came to, he found himself surrounded by white walls. From a distance, a female voice could be heard. "He's waking up. Sebastian, our patient is regaining consciousness." Michael struggled to open his eyes and, through a blurry haze, saw the face of an unfamiliar man wearing glasses. "Are you angels?" Michael mumbled. Laughter followed. "You can even joke. That's a good sign." "No, it's too early for you to be talking to angels. You're better off living in this world." Michael spent almost 3 months in the hospital. Upon his discharge, the same bespectacled doctor told him, "You're a lucky man. Your body was riddled with shrapnel. It took us a long time to remove all the metal from you. But there's one troublesome fragment we couldn't extract because of the high risk." Michael had lived with this shrapnel for over 20 years, believing he would live another 20, but it didn't work out. He felt a warm, familiar touch on his hand. He whispered, "Kate, I'm so glad you're here." He wanted to say that he loved his wife very much, but an unknown force lifted him up and carried him somewhere. It felt so light and wonderful that he felt like singing. But suddenly, his flight was cut short, and Michael found himself in an unfamiliar place where everything was green and birds were singing. Hovering above the ground, just like him, was his friend, Tom. "Well, Michael, we're together again. I've been waiting for you," Tom said. Kate cried silently, and tears fell onto her white gown, worn over her clothes. She felt the strong grip of her husband slowly growing cold and mentally said goodbye to the dearest person in her life. A nurse approached. "He has passed away. Please accept my condolences," she said. The woman understood that she needed to leave the room. She turned to the girl in the white gown. "Thank you for letting us say our goodbyes." In the hallway, Derek and Anna were waiting for her. They didn't ask any questions because they could tell from her expression. Kate scanned the spacious room and said wearily, "And Kevin never made it." Derek crushed to explain Kevin's absence. "Kevin called, and he said he had an urgent matter to attend to." "Mom, don't be mad at him. Life goes on, and the living have their own concerns." Derek tried not to look at his mother. He was ashamed of his brother, but discussing Kevin's behavior at such a moment was at least inappropriate. Anna was folding laundry and watching Lars, who was playing on the floor with building blocks. She could tell by the 5-year-old's strained face that he was having some trouble. "Lars, do you need some help?" The little boy, not looking away from his task, mumbled, "I can do it myself." "All right, I won't get in your way, but if something doesn't go as planned, don't hesitate to ask for help. Dad will be back soon. He can guide you on how to put it together properly. Can you tell me what you're building at least?" "A school. Wow, maybe you should have started with a small house." "Mom, you forgot. I already made a little house. Now I want a school with a pool." "All right." Lars huffed from his efforts, but unexpectedly toppled the unfinished structure. "I can't do it," he exclaimed. Anna turned off the iron and crouched down beside her son. "Nothing's working because you're getting upset. Let's take a break, and then we'll build your school together." "All right." The boy looked closely at his mother. "Are you not lying to me?" Anna was surprised. "Lars, have your dad and I ever lied to you?" "Yes. You promised we'd go to the zoo." "I see, you're upset with us. But there was a good reason, and we had to postpone the trip." "I know. Grandpa died." "Is that a good reason?" "Yes, sweetie. But who told you about your grandpa?" "Uncle Kevin. He told me that Grandpa Michael is dead." and our sweet life is over. Mom, what's a sweet life? Is it when someone eats lots of candy and drinks lemonade? Her son's comments left Anna in a quandary, and she thought carefully about how best to respond so that he would understand. No, honey, it's a little different. Why don't we go to the kitchen? You can help me prepare dinner. Daddy will be home from work soon. Redirecting the little one's attention to a different activity had always helped the young mother get out of complicated situations. Lars loved hanging out in the kitchen more than anything, and he eagerly accepted his mother's offer. He watched Anna with a fascinated gaze, carrying out her small tasks with apparent joy. Before long, he had forgotten what Uncle Kevin had said. Anna mechanically completed her usual tasks, all the while contemplating the family's situation. After Michael's death, her husband's stepbrother had lost all sense of propriety. Kevin promptly ousted Derek from the family business in a public and humiliating manner. However, Derek had left the company with dignity and a head held high. Now Kevin was demanding that they vacate the apartment that her husband's father had given them. He had hinted at it a few days ago when he and Anna had bumped into each other at the shopping center. This self-proclaimed rightful heir had upended the lives of the adult family members, and now he was reaching for their little son. This circumstance angered the young woman more than anything, and as somber thoughts were interrupted by her husband, who jovially shouted from the hallway, "Are there any live people in this house?" Lars rushed to greet his father. "Daddy, I'm helping Mom cook." Derek chuckled. "All right, buddy, I'll help you too. But let me wash my hands first." Anna had become adept at discerning her husband's mood from a distance, and now she sensed that his cheerfulness was feigned. When Derek entered the kitchen, she tilted her cheek for a kiss and quietly asked, "How are you? Did you find out anything?" Her husband evasively replied, "I tried, but it's not as simple as it seems. Let's talk after dinner. I don't want to ruin our appetite." "You're right." For some time after Michael's funeral, the spouses tried to avoid discussing the unfair distribution of the deceased's inheritance. A few weeks later, the brothers went to their attorney to review the will. Kate was also present during this process, but when the lawyer read out all the clauses of the document, she couldn't hide her surprise. "This can't be. Michael told me himself before he died that he arranged things so no one would be hurt. But it turns out that the company and everything else will go to Kevin, and Derek will only get the apartment," the older son sarcastically remarked. "You're absolutely right, Mom. I'm the lawful son, and Derek isn't." "Don't you dare say that. Your dad treated Derek like his own son." Kevin interrupted his mother, saying, "Yet at the last moment, Dad decided to follow the law. Derek has nothing to complain about. I think he should be grateful to our family for everything we've done for him." "Derek, am I right?" Derek couldn't bear it any longer, but he understood that his stepbrother was deliberately provoking him, so he remained calm. "Out of respect for Michael's memory, I won't speak rudely. But, Kevin, don't attribute to yourself the merits of others. You personally haven't done anything for me." "Wow, little brother, if you deny my goodwill toward you, then I'll draw the appropriate conclusions. But not now, because my father's memory is also sacred to me." Kevin emphasized the word "my." The lawyer listened without intervening in the brothers' dispute, but there was something in his demeanor that Kate found unsettling. "Isn't it too early to start fighting for the inheritance? According to the law, you have to wait for 6 months. Derek interrupted his mother. "Mom, I'm not going to ruin my life by fighting over property. My family is far more important to me." Derek left without saying goodbye to anyone, and this didn't escape the attention of the main heir. "I thought he would ask me nicely to let him stay in the company, but he's behaving terribly," Kevin exclaimed. Kate defended Derek, saying, "Kevin, aren't you disgusted with yourself? Why are you humiliating your brother? Derek is right in many ways, and I support him." The man shouted, "Mom, stop calling him my brother. There's no blood relation between us, and I couldn't care less about how Derek plans to arrange his life from now on." Kate didn't say another word. She realized that it was pointless to talk to someone consumed by incomprehensible hatred. Relying on her life experience, she believed that over time, differences would be resolved, and the brothers would find solutions that worked for both sides. She left the lawyer's office without looking back. Kate was overwhelmed with worry, and she decided to consult with Anna. Derek's wife. The mother-in-law shared the details of the conversation and added at the end, Kevin was difficult to get along with even in childhood. Perhaps his personality makes it hard for him to find a life partner. Maybe he's seething with anger from loneliness. Anna didn't say anything at the time, but she thought Kate might be right. Living with such a person was unbearable, but what worried her the most was that after the death of his father, Kevin seemed to take it out on their family. He was consumed by an insatiable thirst for revenge. After dinner, she decided to share her concerns with her husband. Derek, I don't like any of this. Maybe we should leave and go far away from here. Anna, I can't leave my mom alone with Kevin. He's seeking revenge not only against me but against her too. Where does all this anger come from? He's always hated me, even when I was very young when my father died. But I remember how Kevin welcomed me. He gave me pepper juice. I almost died, and we had to call an ambulance. Of course, my father punished Kevin, but it only spurred him on to do more mischief. Derek had never talked about his brother's childhood actions before, and it horrified Anna. That's barbaric. My Pua, you've been through so much. Yes, I've had my share, but I don't like to dwell on it. Bad relationships with siblings are common in childhood, and there are many reasons for it. But I can't understand why Kevin is behaving this way now, especially when he's already inherited everything according to the will. What more does he want? Anna, even I don't understand this myself. I didn't want to tell you this, but I have the impression that my brother is bent on completely destroying me. Derek, that's why we need to leave. Think about Lars. Imagine that Kevin has already told the child that he'll throw us out on the streets. This news caught the men off guard. He remained silent for a while, gazing out of the window as if collecting his thoughts. Anna knew that in such moments, it was best not to disturb her husband. After a brief pause, Derek spoke thoughtfully. Well, he can't throw us out on the street. All the documents for this property are in order. But even if something were to happen, we have my father's apartment. What concerns me more is something else. Anna looked her husband directly in the eyes and asked, do you also think there's something wrong with the will? Derek looked away and said, I don't even know what to think. But in his final hours, my father was lucid and talked to us. He said he'd arranged things fairly for us, but the content of the will says something entirely different. Anna embraced her husband and said, Derek, don't be upset, but Kevin is right in a way. He's Michael's biological son and, therefore, the legal heir. I don't exclude the possibility that Michael had this in mind when he talked about fairness. Derek, I don't care about this inheritance at all. Let Kevin enjoy his wealth. But, Derek, you invested a lot of your time and resources into the company. Aren't you hurt? Derek didn't want to admit to his wife that he was upset about everything that had been happening lately. He didn't tell her about how his stepbrother was demanding money from him that their late father had once given him without any obligation, to buy a car and an apartment. Anna, I'm thinking about visiting my mom tomorrow. Would you like to come with me? We can bring Lars. Grandma will definitely be happy to have such a guest. Derek, you are wonderful. You know, there's something I want to ask Kate. I also want to ask her a few questions. This conversation brought some clarity and reassured the couple. Before going to sleep, Anna checked on her son and mentally wished him sweet dreams. As she lay in bed, she thought about how lucky she was to have a husband like Derek. Sincere and strong individuals like him were rarely encountered. Kate decided to visit her eldest son. She was well informed about the company's affairs as she had managed the company's finances for a long time. However, her husband's illness had demanded her constant presence, and she had to leave her beloved job. She didn't inform Kevin about her visit, confidently walked into the reception area, nearly bumping into the secretary. Robin, nice to see you. Is the boss available? The secretary looked around, a bit flustered, and didn't respond to the chief's mother immediately. Yes, he's in, but Corey is with him. Kate was surprised, as her late husband hadn't held this man in high regard. I wonder why that adventurer has come. Robin mumbled something incoherent again. The unnatural lethargy of the usually energetic secretary raised the widow's suspicions. She approached her, scrutinizing her face intently. Robin, what's going on with you? You don't seem like yourself today. The secretary couldn't hold back her tears and began sobbing on Kate's shoulder. Kevin fired me. Today is my last day here. He has already hired a new secretary. Look, I've packed my things. Don't cry, Robin. I'll try to resolve this matter right away. Without knocking, she pushed the doors open. Kevin jumped in surprise. Mom, why didn't you let me know? Corey, too, startled by the unexpected visit, quickly cleared some documents from the desk. He stared wide-eyed and said, Kevin, I think it's better to postpone our conversation to a more convenient time. I won't get in your way. Clutching a folder of documents to his chest, Corey retreated towards the door. His method of moving backward wasn't very graceful, and Kate couldn't help but smile. On parting, she wished the persistent visitor all the best. Corey, I'm sorry for interrupting your conversation. Corey also responded with a smile. It's okay, I understand. After all, family should come first. Kate made sure the door was securely closed and then approached the desk, where her son sprawled indolently. Kevin had already returned to his usual state of confidence and provocatively asked, What brings you here, Mom? I hope you didn't come to check up on me. Kate tried to ignore her son's challenging tone. If you're trying to annoy me, it's not working. I'd also like to remind you that you've taken this seat prematurely. You should have shown more restraint. It's only been a short while since your father's funeral, and you're already establishing your own rules in the company. I have every right to do so. You were present during the reading of the will, so there's no place for emotions here. Kate fell silent, fixing a penetrating gaze on Kevin's face, making him shiver. Mom, what's wrong with you? I'm looking at you and thinking, can this audacious person really be my son? Mom, could you choose your words more carefully? After all, your son is now the head of the company. That's not a given. The young man loomed over his mother, his eyes flashing like lightning. What do you mean by this? He asked. Just that I have serious doubts about the authenticity of that document your lawyer read aloud, she replied. The woman got up and decisively walked towards the door. Kevin, stop. Explain these insinuations, he urged her. Kevin, although you're my son, I won't tolerate deceit from you or anyone else. Why did you fire Robin? I wasn't satisfied with her work, and I certainly didn't expect such an attitude from you. A different, normal mother would be happy for her son, but you've said all kinds of nasty things to me. If the truth repulses you, then I genuinely pity you, Kevin. I also want to remind you that you have no right to make unilateral decisions regarding the future of our company. If you're planning to make a dubious deal with that scoundrel Corey, Derek and I will oppose it. She headed for the door and felt her son's hostile gaze piercing her back. It was only at the very exit that her simple maternal instinct prompted her to turn around. Kevin, I'll ask you nicely. Stop this. Hatred and malice will not lead to anything good. You might end up consumed by these feelings. In the reception area, the secretary anxiously awaited Kate. Hope still flickered in her tearful eyes as she asked, Kate, what did Kevin say? I'll help you find another job. Kate reassured her, noticing that the woman was on the verge of tears once more. Robin, get yourself together. Don't be afraid of change because, more often than not, they'll lead to something better. You have my phone number. Call me in a couple of days about the job. I'm sure we won't have any issues with that. After his mother left, Kevin sat almost motionless for nearly an hour. Initially, a volcano of emotions raged within him, but then an inexplicable fear emerged from the depths of his consciousness. It was a familiar feeling from his childhood, occurring when his failures were mocked at school. It often surfaced when his mother shared her love with Derek. He had always been afraid that his mother would stop loving him altogether. That's why he didn't want to share her with anyone. But this multifaceted fear had another side. Kevin was afraid that his scheme would one day be exposed. His mother had made that quite clear, and she had also reminded him of the board of directors. Corey hadn't forgotten about this crucial decision-making body either, promising him a substantial share of the overall earnings in the event of their deal. Kevin pounded his fist onto the desk with all his strength. I must eliminate all obstacles, even if they're someone very close to me. He said the last words in a hushed tone, but Robin, who stood near the slightly open office door, heard them clearly. After Kate's departure, Robin had still held on to the hope that her boss would come out and ask her to stay, but her boss's final words had frightened her deeply. From early in the morning, Kate was busy in the kitchen. The day before, Derek had called and said that the whole family was coming for a visit. After her husband's death, they hadn't gathered together as a family even once. But what delighted Kate the most was the opportunity to spoil Lars. She adored her grandson and was ready to fulfill any whims of the little rascal. Over the past few months, she had gotten used to cooking multiple dishes simultaneously, so she started early with the preparations. Surprisingly, the cooking process went smoothly, and Kate finished cooking 2 hours before the guests arrived. She decided to take a short break in a cozy armchair and unwittingly drifted off to sleep. However, during this hour of rest, her slumber brought back distressing memories from her past. The very first memory that resurfaced was her husband's return after a long business trip. Kate wasn't the kind of woman who blindly believed her husband's words. When Michael informed her that he had found work in a neighboring country and would be away for 2 years, she immediately sensed he was lying. Michael's father also didn't believe his son. Since he couldn't discuss delicate matters with his own wife, he shared his concerns with his daughter-in-law. "Kate, Michael is deceiving us. I know about this kind of shift work. Tell me, does an employer give such a generous advance payment in advance? That's one fact. And another is the duration. The guys from our neighborhood go on shifts, but the most is for half a year. Yet here, it's a whole 2 years. So I put it all together and realized that Michael and his buddy ran off somewhere, likely to a war zone." Just hearing that word sent a shiver down Kate's spine. "Ian, but it's illegal in our country," Kate replied. "Kate, don't you know that when someone really wants something, they'll always find a loophole? In other words, I'm convinced our boys are out there. But what can people do when there's no work and they still need to feed their families?" After that conversation, Kate tried not to dwell on the dark thoughts, but the unsettling idea of her husband's secret wouldn't leave her mind. Meeting Molly, Tom's wife, helped ease the tension a little. Their friendship had become a continuation of the close relationship between their husbands. They spoke on the phone almost every evening, sharing the latest news. On weekends, they went to the countryside together with their kids, helping Michael's parents with their gardening. Ian made extra income selling produce at the local market, and Michael's mother had gained a reputation for her culinary skills across the district. However, running a small business no longer satisfied these not-so-young but highly motivated people. One day, the couples decided to start their own company and invited Kate to join their venture. Ian, acting as the head of the family, conveyed this news to her, as usual. "Kate, my mother and I have decided to become entrepreneurs. It might sound funny, but we're really eager to get rich." Kate was genuinely surprised by Ian's bold statement. She replied, "But starting your own business isn't so simple. You need some initial capital to get started." Scratching his head, Ian stated, "We've got a little saved up. We managed to put some money aside during our shuttlecock days." Ian went on to tell Kate how his parents were once desperate and had to travel to countries in the near abroad for work. But when he had a heart attack, they had to quit that kind of work. Michael's father eagerly awaited Kate's approval, but she didn't know how to respond. "Ian, with your heart condition, it's unlikely that you should be seriously getting into business. You can't even imagine the difficulties entrepreneurs face. There are endless inspections and financial reporting." The elderly man enthusiastically slapped his knee. "Kate, I've been talking for half an hour now, and it didn't occur to you." Kate remained silent, and Ian triumphantly announced, "My mother and I have decided to ask for your help with all these papers. After all, you didn't study in college for nothing." At that time, Kate worked as an accountant at the hospital and had no plans to change her life. But she couldn't resist Ian's persistence. She helped her husband's parents with paperwork, found a suitable location for their shop, and, although the business didn't take off right away, a steady income allowed the family to stay afloat. Kate wrote to her husband in great detail about all the changes, but Michael was initially skeptical about the idea of starting a business. However, just before his return, Tom introduced an innovation to create a cafeteria in the store. Molly and Kate learned from their husbands' letters that their husbands would be returning home soon. But the triumphant homecoming never happened. Instead, a man dressed in black arrived at Molly's workplace and informed her that Tom had tragically died. In shock, the widow was handed an envelope with money and the man disappeared. A little later, a letter from Michael arrived in which he informed her about his hospitalization. Michael returned home 3 months later, and at first, Kate had trouble recognizing her formerly cheerful husband in the gaunt man with graying hair. Only at home could he bring himself to tell his wife about Tom's death and his own injury. Her husband was deeply affected by the loss of his friend. He couldn't sleep at night and often woke up startled. It was hard for Kate to see her husband's torment, and she suggested, "Michael, maybe you should see a doctor." "Why? So they can put me in a hospital?" "Well, not necessarily a hospital. They might prescribe some medications to help with the nightmares. I can handle it on my own," Michael replied. Michael told his wife about his friend's final request, and together they helped the young widow. Little Derek spent most of his time with them. Despite their assistance, Molly found it challenging to raise the child on her own, which is why she transferred to the infectious diseases department. "Kate, they pay well there. Of course, there are risks, but if you follow all the safety protocols, the risk of infection is almost nil." But apparently, Molly overlooked something, because during a flu epidemic, she fell ill herself. For several days, she hid her condition, afraid of losing her income. She took tablets to lower her fever, which was discovered one day by Kate. "Molly, what kind of pills are you taking?" Her friend waved her hand dismissively with feigned nonchalance. "It's nothing serious, just a slight fever." "Molly, isn't it dangerous for Derek? Maybe it would be better for him to stay with us for a few days until you're feeling better." "Kate, you're right. An extra layer of caution won't hurt." Michael brought Derek to their home, but 3 days later, Molly was reported missing from work. A phone call from an unfamiliar woman came through. "Sorry to bother you, but Molly didn't show up for work this morning. You're friends with her, so do you happen to know where she is now?" Kate hung up and called her husband. "Michael, something's wrong with Molly. I'll stay with the kids, and you should go check on her. I have a bad feeling about this." Michael found his friend's wife unconscious. It appeared that Molly had gotten up in the morning, preparing to leave for work, but had collapsed near the bathroom. Michael promptly called an ambulance, and she was rushed to the hospital. However, despite the doctor's efforts, they couldn't save her, and Molly passed away on the 4th day, never regaining consciousness. The doctor helplessly shrugged. If she had sought help earlier, it might have turned out differently, but the infection had already progressed to a generalized form. Unfortunately, it's often our own recklessness that gets medical professionals in trouble. Just like Tom, Molly had no relatives. She, too, had grown up in an orphanage, dreaming of becoming a nurse. She had saved many lives but succumbed to a common infection. It was difficult to accept this truth, but life went on, and little Derek needed parental love and care. By mutual agreement, Michael and Kate took custody of the child. Initially, they had considered adopting him, but it would have required changing Derek's last name, something Michael refused to do. It's not right to strip the boy of his heroic father. Tom deserves to have his son carry on his name. Does the surname really matter? They're just initials. What's important is that the child receives proper care. For some people, it's just a name, but for others, it's their roots that anchor them to this earth. The official looked down on the guardian with condescension but said nothing. Little Derek quickly settled into their family and hardly ever mentioned his mother. However, Kevin refused to accept the new family member, even though he had previously enjoyed playing with the little one. Kate was worried about her son's jealousy, fearing it might grow into something more severe. She shared her concerns with her husband, but Michael reassured her. Boys always compete for the right to be the best, the bravest. That's why it's not surprising that Kevin doesn't want to share us with Derek. But, Michael, we need to do something about this. No, we don't. It will pass with time. However, it turned out that Michael was mistaken. It's a shame that Kate only realized it now. Kevin had learned to mask his dislike with excessive demands on his younger brother. In front of their parents, he delighted in demonstrating his knowledge and skills. Derek was also a good student, but he never flaunted his achievements. Kate suddenly got up from her chair and headed to her husband's office, repeating to herself as she walked, "How could I forget about this? When Derek comes today, I'll show him his certificates. Her late husband had a habit of collecting all receipts and other documents. Since his passing, Kate hadn't crossed the threshold of his office once. Today, she decided to break that vow for the first time, searching for Derek's certificates in the archive. Where are they? I remember seeing them here last time. She sifted through folders filled with documents until she came across a transparent folder with a familiar handwriting that read, "Draft of my will." Her heart raced in her chest. But at that moment, a phone call interrupted her, and Kate didn't have a chance to read the document. She rushed out to the hallway to greet the guests, mechanically placing her find in the nightstand drawer. Within minutes, the delighted grandmother completely forgot about her discovery because her full attention was focused on Lars. The joint dinner felt like old times. The young couples praised her cooking and shared their successes, but all three carefully avoided the subject of inheritance and Kevin's improper behavior. Kate went to see the guests off once again and remembered the folder. She and Lars were already at the elevator when she stopped Derek. "Sweetie, could you stay for a minute? I found a very interesting folder in your father's desk today. You're more knowledgeable in legal matters. Take a look at it." He tucked the file under his arm. "All right, Mom. I'll look into the document tonight. Thank you for dinner, and thank you both." She stood at the apartment's threshold, listening to the elevator descending. Kate intended to close the door but heard her son's voice. "Mom, wait." For some reason, Kevin was coming down from the upper floor, which puzzled her. "Kevin, how did you end up here?" A valid question, indeed. After all, I wasn't invited for dinner. His tone and confrontational behavior troubled Kate. "Kevin, why do you seal intentions in simple things? Derek and Anna called yesterday, and I've missed Lars dearly." "Yes, Mom. I know that strangers mean more to you than your only son. Kevin, let's not argue. Come into the apartment, have dinner." Kevin replied, "Fine, Mom. Let's not fight. I'll join you for dinner." Kevin walked into the living room without taking off his outdoor shoes. He glanced at the table, which the hostess hadn't had a chance to clear yet. He began to help himself to the snacks, eating greedily and keeping his eyes on his mother. "If it's not a secret, what have you been discussing all evening?" he asked. "Kevin, I'll get you a clean plate in a moment. Please sit down and eat properly," Kate replied. "Mom, you're dodging the question." "Were you discussing me?" Kevin said. Kate sat across from her son. "Kevin, I can't understand what you're trying to achieve." "Okay, I'll tell you. Right now, I just need your signatures." Kevin wiped his greasy hands on the tablecloth. He hoped to provoke his mother, but she didn't fall for his provocations. She got up from the table, signaling the end of the conversation. "Kevin, I won't be signing anything." Kevin also stood up. "Fine, let's leave it at that. But I know of a way to make you more agreeable." Unexpectedly and quietly to herself, Kate said, "Kevin, I found a draft of your father's will." Kevin choked and struggled to breathe, but Kate continued in the same calm voice. "Kevin, I'm afraid you might be going too far. To prevent that, I feel obligated to tell you the most important thing." What Kevin heard from his mother enraged him. He instinctively made a move toward her, but his hand froze in midair because the woman fell silently to the floor. A paralyzing sense of fear overcame him, and he stared at his mother for a while. Then he rushed to the front door but quickly returned. He bent over the motionless body and called out hesitantly, "Mom, Mom." The ambulance arrived quickly, and Kate was taken to the hospital. The doctor observed her with indifference. "Based on the symptoms, your mother might have had a stroke, but I could be mistaken." Kate spent almost 3 months in the hospital. The consequences of the illness were severe. She couldn't speak or move independently. Derek and Anna rarely left her bedside, which irritated Kevin greatly. One day, the couple arrived at the hospital and didn't find their relative in the ward. When they inquired, the nurse responded matter-of-factly, "Kate's son took her. We've also given him all the documents and discharge papers." They hadn't expected this turn of events. Derek tried calling his brother multiple times, but Kevin didn't answer, so he reluctantly went to Kevin's office, dreading the encounter. Everything seemed to be in Kevin's favor. He wasn't even bothered that his mother had become disabled due to him. When Derek came to see him, he didn't bother being polite. Anticipating his stepbrother's questions, he replied curtly, If you're wondering where my mother is, I can tell you that she's in a safe place. I've placed her in a good private clinic. She's receiving excellent care, so I'm not worried about her." Kevin didn't even offer Derek a chair and acted as casually as ever, saying, "Any other questions?" "Yes, Anna and I want to visit Mom." "Can you tell us where this clinic is?" Derek asked. "It's best not to disturb her. Right now, Mom needs complete rest and no negative emotions." "I've asked them not to let anyone see her," Kevin replied. Derek understood that he wouldn't get anything more from this man. "I understand," he said, ready to leave. However, the office's owner stopped him. "Don't you want to tell me about some confidential documents?" "No," Derek replied. "I thought we had more to talk about than just my mother's health," Kevin said. "Speak, I'm listening." "Fine, Derek. Let's not get worked up. Sit down and listen to me." Derek returned and took a seat in a chair opposite his brother, who was behind the desk. "I'm listening to you very attentively, even though it's not difficult to guess what you want from me. If you're so all-knowing, then go ahead." "Yes, now is the most convenient moment to say everything I'm thinking. If you want me to sign the deal you're planning with Corey, you can forget about it. I don't believe Kate's sudden misfortune. And there's one more thing, Kevin, the will you altered." Kevin jumped up as if stunned. "Get out of my office. You won't succeed with anything. We'll see. And don't even think about threatening my family, Kevin, because if you do, I will crush you." Derek left the office and closed the door carefully. He was satisfied that he had spoken his mind to this scoundrel. But it was too early to jump to conclusions because Paul was still conducting an investigation at Derek's request. Derek maintained constant communication with Paul and had asked him just yesterday to verify where he had placed his mother. When Derek was almost home, his wife called. "Derek, please stop by the store. I forgot to buy milk, and Lars is demanding cookies." "Anna, okay, I'll take care of your request." Derek smiled at the pleasant farts about his son. He smoothly pulled up to the market and headed inside for groceries. Lost in his farts, he didn't pay attention to the two guys who had also exited the car following him. Their faces were concealed by hoodies. Derek headed towards the checkout counter, but on his way, one of the guys shoved him roughly. Derek managed to keep his footing and rebuked the aggressive shopper. "Could you be a bit more careful?" Derek said. The guy also stopped and replied, "Are you telling me this, man? You're the one who bumped into me." Derek didn't want to get into an argument and hastily paid for his groceries. However, the two men didn't let him reach his car and pushed him to the ground. Derek felt something heavy come down on his head. Meanwhile, Anna looked at her watch and couldn't figure out where her husband had gone. She dialed his number several times, but no one answered. Some unknown force compelled her to get dressed and go outside. It was getting late, and there were hardly any pedestrians on the streets. Anna circled the courtyard, but their cars weren't in the parking lot. So, she headed to the store where they usually did their grocery shopping. The market was already closed, and in the parking lot, she saw Derek's car. Her legs went weak, and she nearly collapsed when she noticed a large blood stain on the pavement. A disheveled man nearby cheerfully recounted what he'd seen. "There was a fight here about an hour ago. I was going to the store, and I saw two guys beating up another guy. Probably some dispute or something." With trembling lips, Anne asked, "Where is the man they were beating up?" The disheveled man replied cheerfully, "They took him away, put him in a bag and drove off. But first, the police came and asked us questions. I just told them what I saw with my own eyes. Didn't make anything up." Anna couldn't remember how she made it back to their apartment. She didn't call the hospitals because she was afraid of what she might hear. Only the next morning did she learn that the victim of the attack by unknown thugs was her husband. But her inner voice kept telling her that this tragedy couldn't have happened without Kevin's involvement. Former employees of the company came to bid farewell to the victim, paying their respects to the widow. Anna accepted condolences from everyone, thanking both acquaintances and strangers for their sympathy. She left Lars with a neighbor who had volunteered to help the young widow. Kevin also attended the ceremony, bringing an enormous bouquet of red roses and a wreath. "Anna, please accept my condolences," he said. "Thank you, Kevin," Anna replied. "Hold on, Anna. And remember, you can turn to me at any time. After all, we're not strangers." The mere presence of this man stirred up a myriad of conflicting emotions within Anna. However, she didn't want to delve into her feelings at such an inappropriate moment, so she remained silent, bowing her head. Suddenly, she heard a familiar female voice nearby. "I don't believe in coincidences, especially not in these. When I left the company, I happened to overhear him saying he'd rid himself of all the unnecessary people in his way. That's exactly what he did. First, his mother, and now his brother." The female voice was fading away, and Anna turned. She saw Michael's former secretary, Robin, in conversation with another woman. Forgetting all decorum, Anna hurried towards them, catching a fragment of their conversation. "It's all unclear with the will and family ties," the woman said. Anna grabbed Robin's hand, her voice trembling. "Robin, please, stop." The woman looked around anxiously and then at the widow. "Did you want to ask something?" "Yes, I'm sorry, I overheard your conversation, and I'd like to know." Robin held her hands up. No, you must be mistaken. I don't know anything." Robin linked arms with a friend, and they quickly headed towards the exit. However, the women hadn't gone far when Kevin appeared. "Anna, are you okay?" "No, everything's fine." "What were those ladies telling you?" "Nothing, but I saw you talking to them." "Kevin, since when do I have to report to you?" She had just managed to shake off her late husband's brother's pursuit. Returning home, she began thinking not about how to move forward in life, but how to uncover the truth. Anna understood that for now, Kevin was restrained mainly by their mother. Once she was gone, he might achieve what he desired. Of course, after that, Anna and Lars would likely hold no interest for him. But what if not? What if his hatred was so intense that he decided to rid himself of Derek's son too? She had spent the entire night contemplating this. By morning, she had resolved that the first step was to act like a simpleton, someone who believed everything wholeheartedly. The second step was to hide Lars. However, the third step, finding Kate, still eluded her. Anna wasn't sure how to pull it all off. Lars was too young to be left with anyone for an extended period, and there simply wasn't a trustworthy person she could entrust her son to. Or was there? Anna gazed out of the window, thinking back to about 7 or 8 years ago. She used to have a best friend, a real sister, with whom she shared all the joys and sorrows that young girls have. They met at college and never parted ways after that. Anna felt she had found a sister. Kristen said the same. However, after just a year in college, Kristen had declared, "No, this quiet life is not for me. My soul craves adrenaline." Anna had laughed at the time. Where else do you need more adrenaline? You're constantly stumbling into adventures, and if adventures don't find you, you create them yourself. Kristen playfully raised her finger. "See, my physics teacher used to say if gravity worked so relentlessly, I'd be walking on the ceiling all the time." Anna felt a pang of sadness that they would see each other less, but she understood that Kristen needed her space. Kristen was like the wind, impossible to contain within 4 walls. Kristen had made up her mind to become a rescuer, and Anna tried to dissuade her. "You don't understand how dangerous that is." "Well, it's dangerous to walk down the street too. What if a brick falls on your head?" "Sure, that's possible, but it's a pure accident with a 1 in a million chance. In your case, you'd be deliberately venturing into the depths." Kristen mysteriously smiled. "Let me tell you more. I won't only venture in, but I'll always come out victorious." Their friendship grew stronger with each passing year. In their 3rd year of college, Anna met Ben, and she was smitten. They had a fantastic love story that sparked from their very first glance. Anna then introduced Ben to Kristen. Ben couldn't take his eyes off her. She was so different from Anna. Kristen was bold and daring. After a week, with her characteristic bluntness, Kristen said, "Anna, you need to understand me. Ben isn't your type. You two will get bored together. You won't last long." To this, Anna confidently replied, "This time, Kristen, you're wrong. Ben and I will always be happy together." "No, I'm not wrong. I'm sorry, my friend, even though I know you won't be able to forgive me. Ben and I have submitted our marriage application. You see, Ben and I are alike, both a bit crazy. But you're different. You enjoy creating a home, comfort." Anna covered her ears with her hands. "Stop. Don't you dare say such things, you. And I thought of you as my friend. Leave. Never come near me again, and I'll tell everything to Ben. Kristen attempted to say something more. Anna, you'll thank me later. Get out. Kristen left, and Anna grabbed her phone. Ben, hello. Can you imagine what Kristen just did to me? Yes, Anna, I know. I wanted to go with her, but she said it would be worse. I'm sorry, Anna. About a year later, Anna had already met Derek and forgotten about Ben when Kristen called her. Anna wouldn't have answered the phone, but the number was unfamiliar. Hello, Anna. Hello, it's Kristen. What do you want? I just wanted to talk. We have nothing to talk about, and don't call me again. Anna knew that her relationship with Derek was a million times better than with Ben. She understood that she should be grateful to Kristen, but she couldn't help it. Kristen had betrayed her. She knew that even after all these years, Kristen would never refuse to help her, and Kevin would never think of where to look for Lars. She took her phone. Kristen had called from a new number, so her old one probably wouldn't answer. Still, she decided to give it a try. Hello, Kristen. Anna. Anna, what happened? How do you know something happened to me? You know I always know everything. Anna smiled through her tears. Kristen had always said that, justifying her phenomenal intuition. Yes, I know. Kristen immediately interrupted her. Anna, are you crying? Give me the address. I'll come right away. That was all Kristen, as if they hadn't had these years of no contact. Anna gave the address and then added, Kristen, make sure no one sees you. There was a moment of silence on the phone, and then Kristen responded. This is getting interesting. Anna paced slowly from one corner to another. She hadn't taken Lars to daycare today. She simply had no strength. Kevin probably wouldn't keep such a close watch on her right now. He was likely convinced that she was overwhelmed with grief and couldn't think straight. Anna felt exactly like that. But she had a son, and she had to ensure his safety. She was determined to find out who was responsible for Derek's death and expose them. She had no doubt that it was Kevin, but her certainty meant little to everyone else. Less than an hour later, the doorbell rang. Anna rushed to it, peered through the peephole, then quickly opened the door and practically dragged Kristen inside. Kristen immediately embraced her. While I was on my way, I checked the news. Please accept my condolences. Thank you, Kristen. I'm holding on by a thread. They were chatting quietly in the kitchen, and neither of them noticed when Lars appeared in the kitchen. He, as any polite child would, cheerfully said, Hello. The women jumped, and Anna quickly picked up her son. Sweetie, I didn't even hear you wake up. I woke up. So, what's for breakfast? And who is this lady? Anna sat him in his chair. This lady is my friend. A real one. Yes. Kristen looked at Lars with interest. She didn't have any children. She reached out her hand to Lars. Nice to meet you. My name is Kristen. Lars shook her extended hand. I'm Lars. Then Lars remembered something, looked at his mother, and his eyes began to fill with tears. Anna hurried to him. Sweetie, I'll make breakfast right now. While Lars was waiting for breakfast, he got to know Kristen. Where do you work? I'm a lifeguard. The boy's eyes widened. A real one. The kind that saves people. Exactly, that's the one. I have lots of pictures on my phone. Do you want to see them? Very much. Kristen moved to the couch with him and started showing him the photos. Lars was absolutely fascinated. When I grow up, I'll become a lifeguard too. Anna turned to him. But just a few days ago, you wanted to be a pilot. The boy didn't hesitate. I'll be a pilot lifeguard. Kristen smiled. Do you know what kind of training is needed for that? I'll get ready for it. Well, first of all, you'll need to be in excellent health. You'll need fresh air, swimming in the river, and all that stuff. Lars looked puzzled at Kristen. Where do I get all of that? I have a place like that. Honestly, Lars, what do you think about all of us going there tomorrow to check it out? Lars raised both of his hands. I'm in. What about Mom? And Mom, of course. Kristen had already told Anna that her parents lived about 100 kilometers from here. It was a relatively large village, and many people brought their grandchildren, so Lars wouldn't draw much attention. Anna also needed to go along. First, it wasn't safe here, and second, what if Lars didn't like it there and didn't want to stay? Kristen, how can he be without me? Oh, come on. There are plenty of nannies there. Plus, the neighbors have a 6-year-old granddaughter. Sure, There might not be a lot of winter activities, but her dad will build them a sled, and they'll come up with something. Well, it's a bit inconvenient. Kristen laughed. Oh no, just not with my parents. Anna didn't argue any further. She had heard a long time ago that Kristen's parents were kind. Even when she got into a fight with the local agronomist and broke his nose, they didn't scold her but stood up for her and eventually proved that the guy was harassing her. Kristen always said, "Even if I become a drunk and a homeless person or end up in jail, I know for sure that my parents will always be there as far as it's possible." The next day, as usual, Anna took Lars to daycare. She had brought a large bag over to Kristen's house the day before. She had no intention of leaving Lars at the daycare. On the contrary, she planned to use the daycare as a cover to leave Lars with Kristen while she would go to the other side and get into Kristen's car. The bag was weighing her arm down, and she had stashed all the documents she had found at home. While spending a couple of days in the village, she intended to study and read, maybe find something interesting. They were welcomed like family, and Anna found it very hard to smile. Diane, seeing her struggle, took her aside. "Kristen told me everything. Keeping that grief inside you is harder on both you and your son. Do you really think he doesn't feel it? So, here's what you should do. Go to the river, sit there, cry if you need to, and then come back." Anna looked at her in surprise. "What about Lars?" The elderly woman smiled. "What about Lars? Look how much fun he's having with his grandpa. They're already sketching out the sled run they're going to build. Go, we won't upset Lars." Kevin paced around his office, trying to comprehend Anna's disappearance. He should have pressed her right away, conducted a thorough search at home. He would have found everything immediately. Yet, it didn't happen. He had gone to celebrate another victory, and now this one threatened to turn into a real failure. Although Anna was never known for her decisiveness, it was Derek he should have been wary of. He was the one who could dig into everything. Sitting in his chair, Kevin tried to calm himself down. Two scenarios played out in his mind. Either Anna knew something, and she was hiding because of it, in which case she might just stay put, worrying about herself and her son, doing nothing about it. This scenario was not too bad, but it would still bring some concerns because his peace could be disrupted at any moment. The second possibility was that Anna just wanted a change of scenery following her husband's death. It was a more plausible scenario, resembling the truth. However, he found it hard to believe. After all, Anna was Derek's wife, and there was Derek's son as well. Kevin wished more than anything that this life would not remind him of Derek in any way. It seemed that none of the options suited him. This meant one thing. He needed to find Anna. He needed to search diligently so that the much-feared 6 months wouldn't pass. Of course, she was a nobody here, but there were so many bets. Where should he start? At 6 o'clock in the mall's parking lot, he thought aloud. Shutting down, he rubbed his hands. Today, they would search Derek's apartment, and he was sure they'd find something. He practically rushed through the room. Everything was becoming even more complicated, and he was now convinced that Anna knew something. Had she managed to figure it all out, or did she just grab all the documents from the desk for no reason? Suddenly, Kevin stopped. Maybe there was no folder in the first place. Maybe they just decided to scare me. He liked the thought, but he needed to check everything. Yesterday, the caretaker of his mother had called, mentioning that she had started saying strange words. He needed to visit her. He could only get there in 3 days. As he drove on the road that led to one of the nearby villages, he couldn't help but think that it would be better if his mother passed away before she could talk properly. When he had taken her to the country caregiver, he had truly hoped that her condition wouldn't improve. But what if she did? He hit the steering wheel forcefully, causing the car to swerve, and with some difficulty, he managed to regain control. "I need to be more careful. It could lead to an accident." His mother received him with a perfectly lucid look, and to be honest, it sent shivers down Kevin's spine. So, he was right all along. He needed to get rid of his mother too. Maybe he could give this woman some money. He looked at the woman with kind eyes. No, she wouldn't be able to. After spending some time with her, pretending to care and asking about the changes in his mother, he prepared to leave. He leaned in to kiss her on the cheek, but the woman mumbled, and he heard it clearly. "I know everything." Kevin straightened up sharply. "Yes, You've done a tremendous job. I believe that doctors should take over from here. In a couple of days, I'll come to pick up my mother. Goodbye." He left without giving the woman a chance to say a word. She wanted to tell him that during those 3 days when he didn't call, Kate had made significant progress. She was already speaking many words. Granted, not very clearly yet, but there was progress. Anna and Kristen exchanged glances. "So, what are we going to do?" "Let's go there and figure it out on the spot," Kristen said resolutely, striding toward the house from which Kevin had recently departed. Anna was frightened, but Kristen was already knocking on the door. On the day Diane had sent her to the river, Anna had walked for a long time on the white snow. She had created some intricate trails, shed many tears, and had second farts. But when she returned home, she realized that she had genuinely lightened up. Dinner was already being prepared at home. Anna suddenly remembered that she had been surviving on just coffee for the past few days, and her growling stomach confirmed it. Lars was so tired that he fell asleep almost immediately after leaving the table. Anna sat down on the floor and emptied all the papers from her bag that she had brought with her. She sorted through them one by one, rereading the file labeled "Will Draft." Yes, the way the draft was written completely confirmed not only their suspicions but also resembled something Michael would decide. A person who had drafted a will couldn't have made such significant changes afterward, especially considering he had never had any arguments with Derek. Anna was starting to put all the papers back into the file, simultaneously thinking, "Where could I hide all of this for now?" when another piece of paper fell onto her lap. It stood out in color compared to all the other papers. Anna initially thought it was just some random sheet. She picked it up and unfolded it, her eyebrows rising. "This can't be," she muttered. Kristen staunchly refused to stay home. "Anna, you might disappear without me," she said. "But what about Lars?" She glanced at her son, who was eagerly assisting Gerald with something, weaving or knitting. In fact, over the few days they had been there, Lars hadn't left the man's side. Anna was even slightly jealous. "Why would I disappear? Anna, don't argue. Lars will be fine with his mom and dad. It's so wonderful when they don't pester me about grandchildren." How could Anna argue with that? Besides, she felt much more at ease with Kristen by her side. That evening, a family meeting was held. Gerald placed a sheet of paper in front of him. "So, what do we have?" They deliberated for a long time, talking and thinking. Finally, Diane said, "If he's hiding his mother, it means she knows something. If he's decided to hide her, then most likely she's getting better. Does that make sense?" Anna nodded. "Yes, I thought about that too. Then it means we need to rescue her. To do that, we need to find her, or even better, bring her back." Anna sighed. "Where should we take her? It's clear she needs medical attention." Gerald smiled. "Well, didn't Kristen tell you anything? Actually, my wife worked here as a paramedic for years." Anna looked at them in disbelief. "So, are you suggesting bringing Kate to your place? But you barely know me, and that's quite a significant favor." Anna wanted to cry, but Diane placed her hand on Anna's. "Anna, we're all human beings. People should help each other." Anna immediately burst into tears, and Kristen said, "Even if we find her, how can we bring her?" Diane smiled. "It's simple. I think we need to turn to Nathan." Kristen flared up. "Mom, are you on about this again?" The woman innocently looked at her daughter. "What are you talking about, Kristen? It's just that Nathan has a spacious car. Besides, Nathan will never refuse to help you." Anna looked at Kristen with interest. She hadn't asked her a single question about Ben. Kristen correctly interpreted her gaze and shrugged. "We didn't get married. The day before the wedding, I caught him with another girl in our bed. I'm shocked. Nathan turned out to be a very pleasant young man. They didn't go into details, and he didn't ask too many questions. He was now sitting in his car about 500 meters away from the cabin to avoid being seen by Kevin. He was waiting for a call." The caregiver looked at Kristen and Anna in astonishment. "Who are you?" Anna rushed to Kate, who recognized her, tried to smile and say something but seemed very agitated. Kristen moved closer to the woman. "We're taking Kate with us. Her son wants to harm her." The woman suddenly sat down on a chair. "I knew it. Something told me it wasn't as simple as bringing a person in such a condition here. So, he's trying to set me up. Right, And if you had an inkling, why did you agree? The woman waved her hand. My son got into trouble and disappeared by himself. I'm embarrassed to face people, so I'm paying for his mistakes. And Kevin pays well. The woman stood up. I won't stand in your way. I see that when he comes, Kate gets very nervous. She genuinely looks happy to see you. Anna approached the woman. What about you? Won't he ask you questions? She waved her hand again. Oh, I'll leave. I'm going to my sister. She's been inviting me for a while. Kevin paced his office once more. He wasn't just clever. He was a real businessman. He was so close to sealing the deal. He just needed to press Corey a bit more, and the deal would be in his pocket. Kevin reread everything Corey had left for him at least 10 times. The terms were even better than he had initially anticipated. Now he would track down Anna and her son, squash them like bugs, then deal with the mother to ensure she wouldn't stand in his way or say anything unnecessary, and finally, conclude the deal with Corey. That would be it. He could live on without any further concerns. He would have found her long ago if only he had more time. Now, with inheritance acceptance imminent, he would actively start his search. Kevin, someone is here to see you. The young woman was interrupted abruptly as a man, willing to go to any lengths for money, pushed her aside and entered the office. We've found your caregiver. The man sprawled casually in the chair. For the first time in a long while, Kevin had a thought. What if this man wasn't satisfied with something? If he refused, Kevin realized he'd end up in serious trouble, absolutely free of charge. If you've come so brusquely, do you have news? We found the caregiver. We questioned her, and 2 women took your mother away. I showed a picture of your brother's wife, and it was her. Kevin said angrily, he's not my brother. I don't care who he is to you. Pay up. I've already paid you. What you paid has long run out. Kevin understood that arguing was futile. It was better to pay up. He had sworn to himself many times not to get involved with this kind of people. And here he was. He understood that only individuals like them could resolve the issues that constantly arose, all of which went against the law. Kevin consoled himself with the fact that his relatives had simply given him no choice. Everyone knew he was meant to be the sole and undisputed heir. None of them had any right to even a cent that belonged to Kevin, and that ownership dated back long before his father's death. Kevin deeply regretted his decision to call an ambulance for his mother back then. At the time, he still had some semblance of son-to-mother feelings. He had called the ambulance not out of fear for her life or out of great pity for her, but simply because it had been necessary. Little did he know how many problems he could have avoided. He couldn't have imagined that the calm Anna would decide to take his mother away, and most importantly, he couldn't fathom why. After the man received the money and left, Kevin pondered his path. What was most important to him right now, and where was he heading? He was striving to be the one in charge, the one they praised, but now there was no one to praise or be proud of him. However, it didn't matter anymore. He was very close. His company, specifically his success, was about to take off. He needed to hurry Corey along, to come up with irrefutable reasons to sign the papers early. Regardless, in a few days, he would officially become the full owner. After signing the documents, he would rename the company, ensuring no one could ever lay their hands on it. Kevin was confident that no one would dare to, but he considered himself a very foresighted person, and thus he decided to handle it this way. He wasn't accustomed to putting things off. He didn't have the time to search for Anna and his mother. More precisely, he might not find them before the will became effective. Everything was aligning exactly as needed. Kevin dialed a number. Corey, it's me, Kevin. Kevin, can I not recognize you? I assume you've read everything I left for you. That's absolutely correct, Corey. And you know, I've decided not to put things off. I've been thinking that we can already start benefiting each other, instead of waiting for mere formalities. Kevin felt a trickle of sweat running down his back. He knew he couldn't afford to overplay his hand. He understood that his adversary, no matter what rumors circulated about Corey, would not want to give in. Of course, Kevin was highly knowledgeable in this matter, and although everyone had advised him not to deal with Corey without lawyers, Kevin had always responded arrogantly. You can manipulate anyone but me. Corey remained silent for a while and then said, well, it looks like we can meet. Perhaps I will come over tomorrow. Kevin hung up the phone and nearly jumped for joy around his office. He felt like he had Corey in his hands, and if he agreed to meet, he would most likely accept all the other terms, including signing the papers ahead of time. Meanwhile, Corey was rubbing his hands together too. This young upstart was eager to dig his own grave. To make it more convincing, Corey would slightly reduce his profits tomorrow to make this hotshot understand how difficult it was for Corey to decide. Anna had arrived in the city 2 months ago. She had stopped by her old apartment. It was strange that Kevin hadn't changed the locks or sold it already. Then Anna remembered that he hadn't yet legally inherited it. She surveyed the mess that the people looking for documents had left behind but decided not to touch anything. Anna wore a bright red wig, and it was a sporty-looking Kevin in sneakers. No one who knew Anna would believe it was her. That was because she had always been an advocate for elegant and feminine clothing. She didn't come to the city to admire the apartment's state or the wreckage inside. Anna needed to meet one person in particular, Paul. She knew that Derek had spent a lot of time at her father's friend's place lately, dealing with the very issue that had eventually led to his death. Paul looked at Anna with a puzzled expression. "I'm sorry. You mentioned to the secretary that I'm handling your case, but I can't recall ever meeting you," he said. Anna made sure the door was securely closed and removed her wig. "Anna," Paul exclaimed, "I would have never recognized you in this disguise. You're a master of disguise. Where have you been? I tried to find you after Derek's death. I visited your home several times, called you, but heard nothing. I thought you had simply left, and I even understood why, as it's truly challenging to stay where you both were. You're right, it's very tough. But we had to leave for other reasons. Even so, the forgery of Kevin's will wasn't the only thing he did. No, it's strange how much he hated Derek. No one lied to him or told him that Derek was his biological son. So, where did this hatred come from? It's as if it was deep in his subconscious. I can't understand what triggered it." Anna approached the desk and placed a folder on it. "Tell me, can we prove that the will is not authentic now?" "Yes, I have evidence now," Paul confirmed. Anna slid a file toward him. "This is the draft of the will. And there's something else." She unfolded a piece of paper in front of him, and Paul scanned it. "It can't be true. Does he know about this?" Anna thought for a moment. "At first, I thought no. But Derek had the document, which means not only Kevin's parents but also my husband knew about it. Perhaps that's why the hatred was so intense." "That makes sense, then. It explains a lot." "Anna, I know that tomorrow Corey and Kevin plan to sign the documents. Of course, you can contest it in court later, but I doubt there will be anything left to contest. We need to act tomorrow." Kevin and Corey sat across from each other in the boardroom. Kevin deliberately chose this location to emphasize his significance to Corey, despite having reduced his profits by 2%. However, Kevin understood Corey's reasons. Corey was taking a risk. Kevin knew that nothing would go wrong at this point, but Corey didn't. Behind Kevin stood his lawyer, while Corey's lawyer stood behind him. They took a brief pause to re-examine the documents. Corey, however, was merely pretending to read. He knew this document by heart. He had drafted it himself and was well aware of where the pitfalls were. But Kevin saw nothing, and neither did his lawyer. "Well, what is it?" Kevin inquired, but before he could finish his sentence, he glanced irritably at the door. There, his oblivious secretary was once again refusing entry to someone. He stood up and then quickly sat down in bewilderment as people entered the office. Anna led the way, pushing a wheelchair in which sat his mother like a queen. And the worst part was that his mother was looking at him with clear eyes. Following her was another young woman, accompanied by a man. He was young but had a somewhat strange appearance, with a beard, and he was quite imposing. Kevin felt a deep sense of fear upon seeing this man, and the fact that he was surrounded by this company made it even worse. Although, what could they do other than speak? Kevin turned to Corey. "Let's sign." But Corey pushed the documents away from him. "Kevin, I assume your relatives have come to support your decision." Kevin jumped up in fury. "Why does it matter? I, and only I, make all the decisions here. Is that clear? All of this is mine because I'm the only biological son." He slammed his fist on the table so hard that the water pitcher jumped. And then he heard his mother's voice. "That's not true. And you know it very well. You are not Michael's biological son." Kevin stared at her intensely, as if he wanted to incinerate her with his gaze. "What nonsense are you spewing? You should have been dead by now." Kevin yelled in rage, unaware that the boardroom was now filled with many more people, some of whom were in uniform. "Kevin, you found the adoption document when you were just 10. You had a terrible tantrum back then. They even admitted you to the hospital, and when you were discharged, you acted as if you didn't remember anything. Your father and I decided that it was for the best, especially since everyone around us was convinced you were our son. But recent events have shown that you remembered everything. You couldn't forgive Derek because he was on equal footing with you. But no one thought you would go this far out of anger and envy. You were never the first or the successful one. Derek was smarter than you. Derek had a good head on his shoulders, and you could only take pride in being Michael's son." Kevin suddenly burst into laughter. "Derek is smarter than me. Well then, tell me, where is your Derek now? And where am I? And you, dear mother, you survived only by some chance when you weren't supposed to." Kate gazed at Kevin attentively. "I knew it was you, but deep down, I held on to hope that I was mistaken." Anna was crying, and Kevin finally noticed that the room was filled with people. Even the employees of the company were crowding in the doorway. The only person missing was Corey. Nobody noticed when or how he disappeared. "No, all of you should just drop dead. None of you are worthy," Kevin exclaimed. Kevin rushed into his office where he kept a pistol in his drawer, but he didn't make it in time. The strange, bearded man reacted quicker than anyone else, catching Kevin in stride with one hand and lifting him off the floor. Kevin screamed and attempted to bite Nathan, not realizing that he was the one. But his efforts were in vain, and within a minute, they had taken him away. Kate wearily said, "If Derek were alive, he would have taken charge. I'm getting old, although I have an excellent daughter-in-law who will sort everything out and become an excellent leader." Anna shook her head in fear. "No, I can't. Anna, tell me, for whom did you leave? For whom did you unravel all of this? For whom did you put me through 3 hours of aerobics? For Lars, but no bits. All of this will eventually go to Lars. Don't you want him to inherit only the title?" Kristen encouragingly placed her hand on Anna's shoulder. "Don't doubt yourself. You can handle it. You know I'll always be here. I'll help in any way I can." Nathan chuckled awkwardly. "Me too." Kristen sternly looked at him. "You live 100 kilometers away from here, in your den. You don't want to move to the city, so don't mislead people. If you agree to marry me, I'll return to the city." The room fell silent for a moment. Anna looked on in astonishment while Kate smiled, observing the couple. Kristen squealed and threw herself into Nathan's arms. Kate sighed. "Well, now I'm at ease. With you, there will be reliable people by her side." A year passed, and 3 people walked along the path to the cemetery. A beautiful woman who resembled a businesswoman on the cover of a fashion magazine, an elderly woman leaning on a cane, and a 7 or 8-year-old boy who gently supported his grandmother. The elderly woman was the first to enter the graveyard. "Hello, Michael. Hello, my son, Derek. You see, I've come to you on my own 2 feet, and it's all thanks to Anna and Lars. They didn't abandon me." Lars reached out to Anna, and she bent down. "Mom, does Dad and Grandpa hear Grandma?" Anna sat down, smiled gently, and said, "Of course, honey, they hear her, and they even see her. We just can't see or hear them, but we should know they are here, always watching over us." She then hugged her son and whispered softly in his ear, "And they also see how well you're doing in school and how you behave during recess." Lars blushed deeply. "I will behave very well from now on." They stood for a long time by the beautiful monuments that Anna had erected 6 months ago. Each lost in their own thoughts, they felt a lightness in their hearts, as if their dear ones were truly nearby. Anna sighed. "It's time to go," Nathan called. "He's taking Kristen to the maternity hospital." Kate smiled. "Why didn't you say anything earlier? We need to get there urgently. I don't want to miss such an event. Kristen and Nathan are like family to me." Anna shook her head doubtfully. "Kate, you must be tired." "Me? Not at all." As they walked to the car, Anna thought about how to convince her mother-in-law to stay home. She could see that the elderly woman was indeed tired, but it was as if she could read her thoughts. "Anna, don't even think about it. I'll rest while we're on our way." At that moment, Anna's phone rang. It was Nathan. "Anna, I'm begging you, please come. Kristen refuses to give birth. She says it hurts, that she's changed her mind. They want to give her an injection and send her home, and she'll come back tomorrow. What should I do?" Nathan was on the verge of tears. Anna laughed. "Hang in there, Nathan. We're on our way." Anna knew Kristen well and believed that this was precisely what happened. She dialed Kristen's number. "Yes." Kristen screamed so loudly that it seemed you could hear her across the entire city. "Hey, Kristen. I heard you chickened out. I thought it was just me, but apparently not." "Anna, you can't imagine what it's like." Suddenly, Kristen paused, realizing that Anna had Lars and had already been through labor. Kristen asked in a plaintive voice, "Anna, how do you endure it?" "It's simple, Kristen. Just do what the doctors tell you and calm down. The more nervous you get, the worse it will be. We're on our way to you, my friend. Everything will be fine, I promise." Kristen quietly sobbed on the other end of the line. "I once told you those exact words. See, everything will be fine, just as you promised, and you'll be just fine, I promise you." At the hospital, they encountered Nathan with bewildered eyes, as if he didn't recognize them. Anna had to shake him a few times. "Nathan, Nathan." Finally, he looked at her with understanding. "Girl, you know, a baby girl was born. Kristen and I decided to name her Anna." Anna smiled, and tears streamed down her cheeks. And so began a new, brighter chapter in their lives. And little Anna became a symbol of love and hope, reminding them that even in the darkest times, there is always